that night I was invited to the bachelor party. Got there, just a few men were there, a couple ladies, and he bought me a drink, celebrating.
There was undercover cops in this club where they weren't supposed to be there. With them being in the club, coming out of the club, party was over, Sean was already outside.
No, I just left him. I started walking to the car, but he said, "No, I'm okay." He told me to go. So I went on my way and let him go on this way. Figured he's going to have breakfast, get ready for the wedding. I was thinking, I need me some rest. Shit, we got a few hours. We're going to be walking down the aisle.
They went down the block. They said that Guzman said, "I'm going to get my gat," but Sean coming back said, "I'm going inside to get my cap." So this undercover cop, Nora, followed them. Guzman sees this and he's telling Sean, "Go," because he thinks he's going to get shot up. Sean pulls up, the cop started shooting. But it added up to 50 shots.
So that's the hurting part about it. 5 minutes, but by the time I got home, he didn't exist no more.
He was kind. He was good-hearted. He wanted to be a man of his word by marrying the woman who had his children.
He was so passionate about baseball.
He was excellent. He was good. Between that and pitching, he strike people out. It was like, come on. He's a one-man army by himself. I was his biggest cheerleader. I was one of his biggest cheerleaders. I'd be screaming and hollering, go home with a hoarse voice from cheering him on. He'd love to hear me there, but he'd be like, "Auntie, why only hear you? Why only hear you?" Like, you know why, because you love it. I wonder where he would have been today if he had been living. Where would he have been in his life?
I'm Chris Colbert. Thanks for tuning in to Say Their Name, brought to you by DCP Entertainment. This series takes a deeper look into the impact of the assault and killing of Black people by the police and in stand-your-ground states. We share the stories from families who have been negatively impacted in these situations. We did not talk to officers or to governing bodies, just the families and their support systems. We are not the court of law, nor do we try to be for legal purposes. We are not here to presume guilt or innocence for anyone, because, quite frankly, we do not want to be sued. We simply want to give the families a voice while examining what happens when the hashtags stop, and the news unfortunately moves on to the next big story. All we want to do is give the families the opportunity to control their narrative and share ways we can all help. Warning: some of the discussions may be particularly disturbing and even emotionally overwhelming at times. When one of those moments occur that may be particularly triggering, you will hear this chime. For more specific details on the timing of these moments, please visit our show notes. On this episode of Say Their Name, we focus on Sean Bell. On November 25th, 2006, Sean Bell, his dad William, and a few associates, Trent Benfield and Joseph Guzman, were hanging out at Club Kahlua in Queens, New York. They were there in celebration of Sean, as he was preparing to marry Nicole, the mother of his two children, Jada and Jordan. Shortly after William left the fun to get some much-needed rest in anticipation for the big day ahead, he received some terrible news. Sean and the two other young men had been followed out of the club by one of the 5 plainclothes officers who were undercover. Without identifying themselves, Officer Isnora and 2 other officers approached the vehicle. As Sean tried to pull away, he collided with an unmarked police minivan, blocking them in as officers fired upon them. Over 50 rounds were fired into Sean's vehicle. Sean was shot 4 times, damaging vital organs and killing him. Joseph Guzman had been shot 13 times, and Trent Benfield was shot 3 times. Both were severely injured, but they would survive. Sean was only 23 years old, and a day that was supposed to be joyous had now become a tragic one. Word began to spread quickly. One of the first to hear the news were Sean's parents, Valerie and William.
By the time I got home, she get a phone call. He's in the hospital.
Mr. Bell said he came in maybe about 4 o'clock, maybe 15, 20 minutes later. I received a phone call from Nicole's sister. She was saying Sean was in an accident. I'm thinking, okay, I know he was a driver, a car accident. Jumped up, got dressed, went to the hospital where I worked for 20 years, Jamaica Hospital. That's where they took him, because Jamaica Hospital is considered a trauma hospital, and they took the other two to Mary Immaculate Hospital. So get there, and all I see is cameras, police cars. When I'm going into the emergency room area, there's this room. Sorry. Where they take you, and where they take you to this room, you know they're going to tell you that your loved one has died. So, went into the room. They told us, and I fell to my knees. And I cried out for my mother, saying, help Sean, because she had already been deceased since 1988. So many people around called my bishop who came, and other people were there. It was like crazy. We waited almost 6 to 7 hours before we can see him. And I'm thinking, and I didn't think then, I said, I work here, why I just didn't storm through the emergency room? That didn't come to mind. So we just waited, you know, people talking, people want to interview you, and it's like, why? It's crazy. But that's how it happened.
And at that time, did they tell you, like,
Nothing.
how he died?
Circumstances or no?
Nothing.
Nope.
Nothing. Only the newspapers saying what they were saying, and, you know, no officers came to us to tell us what happened.
It seemed between word of mouth and the media, that was the only way the family was able to receive information. And soon, word would reach Anya, Sean's aunt and Valerie's little sister.
About 5 o'clock in the morning, my phone was ringing. And it was a girlfriend of mine that I grew up with that lived on the block that knew my family well. She called me and was crying hysterically. I couldn't make out what she was saying. I kept saying, what are you trying to say? She was just crying profusely and going, shh. She was stumbling over her words, and finally I said, Bunny, please, I don't know what you're saying. Could you please tell me, what are you saying? She said, they killed Sean. I said, who? She said, they killed Sean. I said, no, Bunny. I said, no. I said, who killed Sean? She said, the police. I immediately started screaming, running back and forth in the house. My daughter was in the bed. She said, Mommy, what happened? I said, they killed Sean. My girlfriend said, I'm coming to get you. I said, I can't go. I said, I'm not going. She said, yes, you have to go. Your sister is there. You have to go. I said, all right. My daughter said, Mommy, why on my birthday? It was my daughter's birthday. She was turning 16. It was just horrible, horrible, horrible. My girlfriend came, got in the car, rode over to Jamaica Hospital in this conference-like room. When I walked in, everybody's head was down. It was just horrible, horrible, horrible. It was the worst thing that you could ever want to imagine. Then from there, you know, I didn't know what to do, what to say. I was lost for words. So they had decided to pick out who they wanted to go down to the morgue to identify the body. I was one of the people, along with Bud's cousin, Mr. Bell's cousin, my sister.
That's when whoever was in charge of the mortuary in the basement of the hospital came and got us and pulled the cover. They did not tell us how many times bullets hit him. Like I said, we found out during the trial. And the woman who took us down there, to me, was just a cold person. I said, I guess probably that's how they're supposed to be for that type of job.
We went down there. It wasn't a pretty sight. They prepared us as before we went in. When I went in, they had a sheet covering him from neck down.
The first thing I did, I looked at his face to make sure no bullets hit his face, because he was a good-looking young man.
I saw his hand, and I said, no, I didn't see this. But then again, I said, I know I'm not saying what I'm saying, meaning handcuffs. It was like one of his hands had a handcuff on it. I don't know if both, because the sheet was kind of covering. But I didn't say anything. I just, kept it to myself.
The strangest part about it, he was handcuffed to the gurney. Yes, people don't know that. Why a dead man is handcuffed to the gurney? What he gonna do to you? What do you want us to see? That he's an animal? He's a chain, you know what I'm saying? That's what in slavery days, you chain you up and kill you and hang you. Well, you're still doing it. So why are you doing this and showing the family this?
I just kept shaking my head. Shaking my head. I was like in disbelief, like this is a dream. This did not happen. And then, leaving from there, that's when it was like all chaos. It was like, couldn't get out of the hospital. News reporters and cops, and it was horrible. Some elected officials, people that I've only seen on TV. Now I'm seeing them in person. But I wasn't paying them any mind because my mind was in a fog. I wasn't paying Valerie any mind. I wasn't paying Bud any mind. I was numb. I still couldn't believe that this was happening. I'm like, and it's not that he was shot. It was how many times that they shot. So that kind of like had me like, was it necessary? Was it necessary for 50 bullets? I know Valerie doesn't like talking about any of this, but me as a mother, I don't know how she has been able to hold her head as high as she has been holding it for all these amount of years. She's a very strong lady, very strong. They showing it on the news. I don't even want to look at it because it hurts. It hurts.
But other relatives of ours,
Yeah, they found out.
it was
in the
worldwide on the news. After I came out of the hospital, just feeling a void, not thinking, I went to the beauty parlor because I'm thinking there's still going to be a wedding. A friend of mine from where I used to work at
Lost it a
Jamaica
little
Hospital came with me. Just, routine. Church the next day. I just kept moving. Families coming in from left to right, trying to plan for a funeral, the things that's needed. It was hard, but it had to be done. It had to be done.
I know a lot of family was coming into town for the wedding. What happened to those family members that came up?
Well, the ones that were away weren't come for the wedding because I told my son it was too short of a notice. But they all came to the funeral. But I have to say this much. I thank God it wasn't no rioting. I thank God it was calm, that people understood what kind of parents that brought him up that he has, that they wasn't going crazy. Even at his funeral, gang members came to the funeral. It was overloaded of people standing against the walls and a lot of people outside So I thank God they had a sense of a good sense not to go crazy, because it wouldn't do anything to bring him back. It would just hurt and harm them. And of course, the cops would have arrested them or kill somebody else. December 2nd on a Friday, funeral was here. People were lined up. They had sections for the politicians on that side, and the family was, this is where we sat, closer to the end, on this side. And
all that side was for the clergymen and politicians, which we had no idea why they here.
Yeah, that's
but
how
they
they
didn't do
do.
nothing for us. Even them clergymen all showed up. They didn't do nothing for us. They didn't even bother to shake our hands. You know what I'm saying? But they're here. It's for what? To take space when my family couldn't come. Because I had a big family. She has a big family. Our family member had to stand around or go downstairs.
Yeah, they had a list. We had to make, my sister had to, rest her soul, made a list. We had to make a list of people who were able to come in. And like I said, it was standing room only. It was just in another world. That's how I felt.
Only thing I really remember about that day, it started raining when we took the body out.
Yep. Like
Start
the skies opened
rain.
up, pouring down rain.
Yeah.
And that same night where he was supposed to have his reception, we had to repass La Bella Vita on Rockaway Boulevard.
In addition to the marches, protests, and civil rights leaders calling for justice for Sean Bell, more entities began to speak out against what happened to Sean. There were 5 officers involved in the killing: Jessica Isnora, Michael Oliver, Paul Headley, Mark Cooper, and Michael Carey. The mayor of New York City, Michael Bloomberg, said, "It sounds to me like excessive force was used," and called the shooting inexplicable and unacceptable. Even former New York State Governor George Pataki shared that he thought the shooting was excessive. In response, the New York City Police Commissioner Raymond Kelly put the 5 officers involved on administrative leave and stripped them of their weapons, all of which led to the criminal charges brought on March 16, 2007.
There were 5 officers that were involved, but only 3 went to trial because of the 3 who mainly shot so many bullets.
Officer Isnora, who fired the first shot, and Officer Oliver, who fired 31 of the 50 shots, were charged with first and second degree manslaughter, second degree reckless endangerment, and first and second degree assault. Detective Mark Cooper was charged with 2 counts of reckless endangerment. All of them pleaded not guilty and opted for a non-jury trial, leaving the final decision up to the judge.
Going to court and think you're going to win.
Think of the shootings that go on now with they on video. Back then, there was the phones that had video, but shooting 50 times, people were afraid to video it. I heard a young lady who came to trial, she hid behind a bush at a house.
And they tortured her.
And they tortured her.
They tortured her.
She came to, and
she was afraid to even testify.
They treated them like they were the bad ones.
Yeah,
all the ones who testified,
like
they treated them like they were the criminals, even up to Sean. And he's dead, and they treated him like he was a criminal, like he did wrong.
They were all criminals.
What were some of the things they were saying about Sean?
They're going to say that he hit the officer leg with his car, or they mentioned because he was drinking, how his alcohol level was a certain level. But the young man, and when his father asked him, "You want me to take you home?" He knew he was able to drive. Right. Who doesn't drink at a bachelor party? He knew his limit. Neville Mitchell was the one who consulted us during the trial. He sat with us every day that we were there. Just the things in listening in the trial. I'm not a lawyer, and I'm saying, shouldn't they say, what's that word when the lawyers object? And he was trying to explain to me the reason they wouldn't say it. Just sitting there every day, and sometimes I would think, okay, this judge is going to convict him because of things he would say. And there was no jury, and I believe if there was a jury, they would have been convicted.
But the judge didn't give the whole thing. The judge didn't want to talk about the murder. They didn't want to talk about Sean's death.
They talk about their past.
Right. They didn't
what
want
they
to
were
talk
doing.
about what the cops did to him. Nobody talked about he got shot, he was dead.
Was anyone in the family or who testified or on?
Nobody from my family
But
testified. You testified?
Yeah, you remember the first, I came up that day, I couldn't come in. They asked me was I in the club, but they asked me was I there, who did I see? And I told them I saw the officers there, that came out. They were sitting there drinking. That's all they wanted. Then they asked me, did you know Guzman and them? I said, no. Then, the other lawyer, oh, well, You ever brought him to your house? I said, no. He said, well, he wasn't no good friend. Good friend of them. He didn't want to bring these dealers to your house because he didn't know they were bad guys. I said, that didn't make sense to me. I said, because he's he's a distant person. His friends are his friend, not mine. What I need to know him for? Yes, it was like unbelievable. He's going to attack me about my son, but you're not going to win with that. And it was amazing, though, how he attacked me about the friends. How come he didn't bring him by the house? How come you didn't know him? Yeah, I don't know. So I don't know him. What's the problem? I don't know him. Feelings, emotion, everything was like to the top of the peak. My nerve was shot. I'm shot, man. I'm just looking at them, and they're sitting across from us. The whole side, number of cops. Why are y'all here? You're not intimidating us, period. I guess that's one of the things they do. They try to intimidate you, looking at you. Don't bother me. When break time, I walk alongside of you. You don't bother me. Because what you did, unless you're going to do it to me, I have no fear for you. I do not fear you at all. And when the judge said, we're not talking about the murder, the death of that young man, that blew my head. Why are we here? If we're not talking about his death, I thought the purpose of it, to see if these guys were right or wrong for killing this young man. But he said, we're not talking about the murder. He bring people from California about design, how the angle is, the gun was, and this and that. Who cares about the angles of the guns and stuff like that? You bring this guy out of state for this. Well, this angle was this way, but you never proved that a bullet was shot out of the car. You proved everything was shot into the car. You talking about angles. Who cares about angles? He's dead. And another man got 17 bullets in him. The other guy got on crutches. What are you talking about angles for? Not a bullet was shot out of the car, period.
Why dissect the angles going into the car if
That's
we're not going to acknowledge where
about.
they landed?
It
like,
freaked
that
me out,
doesn't...
man. It freaked me out. I couldn't believe it. I paid attention to everything. Yeah, that's another thing they brought up, his eye. He had a bad eye.
Our son's eyes. They had the doctor come from the eyeglass place on Jamaica Avenue, come up to be a witness because Sean had a stigma in his left eye and he wore contacts. So they saying the doctor who said he couldn't wear glasses because they would have been too thick, so he wore contacts. So they had that doctor come in.
But what that had to do with the murder? See, that's what I'm saying. Anything trying to discredit the young man. Well, you can't say he was blind. If he was blind,
So
you shouldn't have shot him.
they're trying to say he didn't see, they saying they didn't see a badge.
It wasn't no badge.
I know it was no badge. I'm just trying, I guess that's one of the tactics they were trying to use, that his eyes were bad. There could have been a badge and he didn't see the badge, that type of thing.
But it was so dark, you couldn't see a badge if there was a badge. That block, they have no lights.
They
Thank
shot
you.
on the passenger side, not his side. Whoever bullets that went into Guzman, that came out of Guzman, went into Sean. And that's what I'm thinking. Or since bullets are flying everywhere, those could have just hit Sean.
Who gonna tell it? Who gonna tell it who he was, what he was about? Because first thing they did, they assumed he was in a gang. He was this and that. He did this and that.
And there was a gun. No gun.
There wasn't no weapon whatsoever. They searched the projects. What the project got to do with the vehicle he was in, that you shot him up in.
Yes.
And the weird thing about it, went through the whole project, they didn't find no weapons. And
At
we
all.
know that weapons all over the neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? Think about it. So what you accomplished by doing that? Nothing. Make yourself look like an ass.
Yeah.
Because if people with common sense will understand, wait a minute, what are you going through the project searching for? It happened in the car, in this dog alleyway.
Yeah.
Why are you going in the project? He didn't get to the projects. He's in the car dead. So how you going to be searching the project? That part I can never understand.
And how they said it was a fourth man. It wasn't a fourth man.
You had this baby seat back there.
Back there.
If that baby seat could have got up and walked away, maybe that'd have been a man, but that wasn't no man. Only two people could get in this car. He would not take his baby seat out.
Right.
If you want to ride with him, I'm sorry, that's my baby seat. That's Jada, this is his older one. He's not going to let nobody take that seat out,
Yeah.
and nobody sitting in that seat. So what was the fourth man?
Right. And when they said the fourth man, I thought about our oldest son because he was supposed to be there with him. William, he's a junior. He kept calling, Ma, Sean didn't call me. I said, wait, he'll call you. But thank God he didn't call him because he could have been another one shot up in the car.
The defense team brought up so much in the case of Sean Bell, digging into his and the other victims' past. Officer Isnor also tried to argue that there had been a fourth person who had ran from the vehicle. However, that was disproven. As the trial wrapped on April 25, 2008, down came the verdict. All 3 officers had been acquitted of all charges filed against them. The judge said in the decision that the prosecution witnesses who testified that the officers opened fire without warning lacked credibility.
It was the roughest thing. To me, they like slapped me in the face. You know, you have no right to speak and judge us for what we say. We have no rights. That's what they put it.
Not guilty.
And not even criminal endangerment. Because they shot bullets into a house. They almost shot another cop running for his life on the Antrim. No criminal endangerment. You almost killed somebody in the house, almost shot another cop. Well, you gonna blame my son for that?
Right.
Well, he was running.
On the Long Island Railroad.
Train, right. All that would dismiss.
Something you never forget. And like you said, after the not guilty, a lot of people out in the front of the courthouse and, you know, screaming.
Yeah,
and
sharpshooters on the roof. For the people that waiting out there for the trial to hear the verdict.
Verdict, yep.
Sharpshooters on the roof.
They thought they were going to really go rioting, but thank God they didn't. They were just screaming and upset.
Think about it.
I broke down crying and, you know, things that you want to do, you didn't do, like jump up and run and at them. I held my peace, just cried. And just thinking that judge, you know, come on, judge, I'm thinking what you were saying, you would find them guilty. But that was his last case.
I found out he was a very prejudiced judge. I found that out.
He retired after that.
You're still paying them. They're still on salary. They still get their pension.
Except one.
Except
he
for
got
one,
fired.
because
the one who followed
he
him.
said he didn't do nothing wrong.
Because he went to
an
eternal trial. After the main trial, the Internal Affairs placed him under
They
trial.
all were charged for not following procedure. That's why they were let go. After they went to trial and everything, the department got rid of them anyway because they didn't follow procedure. Not that tell you something there right away.
Well, 2 of them, right. The main one who followed them was fired. The other 2, plus the lieutenant, left on.
No, they made an agreement. They wasn't.
Yeah, they made. No, the first one was fired. It's Nora. He was.
Oh, no, because he went to court.
Right, he went to court. He went to Internal Affairs of court. He was fired, but the other 3, involving one of the lieutenants and the other 2, said we want to leave without pension. That's why they, you know, made a deal with them.
But
only one was fired.
The one that shot 31 times. Excuse me, I got to bring this in. He went out and celebrate. I want people to know that. He went out and celebrate with champagne that night.
Yeah, because showed it in the newspaper.
They had it in the
find
newspaper. See, people didn't know that. That's the part I want to get in before I forget. I want you to understand how happy he was he killed the black man. He went out and celebrate with bottles of champagne, $90 bottles of champagne. He popping and people taking pictures of him. And he got women all over him. Now you tell me about this injury. Who is he? And they let this go. And he went to court after that, and they still let him go, say he didn't do anything. And this man out there celebrating, drinking champagne for a death of a young man the night after. He went out partying.
Yep, and that's what happened.
And these judges work with the police. They work with them. So they ain't going to go against these guys because they make their cases for them. Whether they're right or wrong, the police make their cases for them. So they're going to be on their side. They're going to act like they're on your side. They're not. If it's not independent,
well, there's a lot of them.
It's not going to happen.
There's a lot of them that they, you know, got Amadou Diallo case.
Yeah, that's another one. 41 shots.
Amadou Diallo was a 23-year-old student who on the morning of February 4th, 1999, was shot 41 times by 4 plainclothes officers while standing outside his own apartment. He had no weapons. All he had was his wallet in his hand.
They took that out of the Bronx and moved it someplace else, 41 shot. There's so many cases that before Sean's, after Sean's, not guilty. There's a case July 4th, 2016. Oh boy, it was on the 4th of July. And it was a black cop who got off. Delrawn Small's road rage. He was road rage and he got off. Mohamed Bah, there's so many out there in New York that you never heard of because the family members are like afraid to come out and speak about their cases. So that's why I go out and talk about our son's life. The person that he would have been if he was still living. Let them know he wasn't a piece of God. He was a human being. He had something going for himself.
Though the family didn't get justice through the criminal court hearings, Nicole, the mother of Sean's young children, found victory in civil court On July 27, 2010, a settlement was reached as New York City agreed to pay Sean Bell's family $3.25 million. Joseph Guzman, who still has 4 bullets lodged in his body, received $3 million, and Trent Benfield received $900,000. The total amount of the settlement was $7.15 million. Sean's father, William, joined the movement and began protesting and advocating for his son, while meeting many other parents who lost their children to police violence. He and Valerie even pushed to have actual police procedures changed as a result of the passing of Sean. The 50A repeal bill now discloses law enforcement disciplinary records to the public, increasing systemic accountability through transparency, and taking New York one step forward to addressing police violence in our communities. The second addresses the concern that those plainclothes officers themselves may have been inebriated. On November 15, 2013, the Second Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals ruled in Lynch v. City of New York that it is constitutional for the New York Police Department to administer a warrantless breathalyzer test to any officer who discharges a firearm resulting in death or personal injury.
So the undercover cops, they were allowed to drink,
But they had the other clubs they went to. They had allowed to drink at those too.
probably.
So we don't know how your resistance are for the alcohol.
Right,
You could have got drunk over one drink. We don't know this.
right.
But they wait 72 hours to check them out to make sure they have no alcohol in them.
But now that's changed to 72-hour quota because of what happened to Sean. They made a law, I don't remember the name of it, you could look it up, that they have to be tested within 24 or 48
They should have
hours.
been tested right away.
Right away. Well, that's what they're supposed to do with the law. He was out there from 2006 until what, 8 years, 2014.
Yeah, I was out there big time.
Big time. Going to the marches.
Doing everything, visiting with the family. I know, like I said, I know all the mothers she meeting.
Well, the mothers now,
Yeah.
you met when it happened, but you met the mothers between 2006 up to
Yeah,
2014. A lot happened. Everybody wants to march and protest.
On Fifth Avenue, they had both gangs out there. There over 50,000 people was there. Walked down Fifth Avenue. Now one window was broken.
Oh, not at all.
And the thing that got to me, I didn't march with the group, because it was too much chaos back there. People trying to get it. So I decided
Everybody want to be in the
leave.
front, right?
Her sister and 2 other friends.
I was going with Mr. Bell a lot of places when they did a march down Fifth Avenue. I did it with him. Scary because a lot of people pushing and angry people that was being pushed and shoved and pulled this way and pulled that way. And so eventually me, Mr. Bell, and the people that we came with, we just decided to take down the middle of the street by ourselves without all the chaos and people back there. We left them back there and we just walked by ourselves. And, because they had the whole Fifth Avenue blocked off. They had barricades.
We walking down Fifth Avenue by ourselves. They were putting up the barricades so fast. They said, "Sir, could you please slow down? Let me put them up."
And the people knew who Mr. Bell was, so we just walked and stopped for a little while, and people on the sides and was waving. And I just kept my head down the whole time. I was like, oh gosh, until I had to walk, and then I brought my head back up. But, we stopped for a minute. I put my head back down. I just kept looking straight ahead because I've never been through anything like this.
But the crowd never caught up with us. When we got to the end, we watched them come in. I didn't want to I wasn't part of the, to say be on TV. I did it because I'm doing it for him, So that's why I didn't need the crowd, the sharpness and all that to walk with. They did, I didn't. I said, no, I'm going by myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a public speaker. I've never been through anything like this in my life. So, like I said, I'd never imagined this until it hit as close to home as it did. I feel so bad for all the mothers that have to go through this. You expect your child to come back in. That's why I worry so much about my child, my son. I worry about him a lot, being in the streets. He's 35. I worry about my son. I worry about him even more so now. More than before, but...
That's right, exactly. You know, they get this coverage and all this and that, you know. Well, I don't need that. I'm not here for that. It's not about that. What I want you to do something with them.
I started going out then to Albany to have meetings in front of the Black Caucus, meeting the politicians, going to their meetings. In 2015, if you could look it up, Governor Cuomo signed executive order for a special prosecutor. I was involved with that and other things that went on over the years. So I decided to focus on his life right now because I want people to know who he really was, not to think he was just some person that was killed by the police. You could look up the 50 shots. I don't really like talking about that anymore because I want to talk about who our son was and what he was going to be if he was still alive. So we did have Sean Bell Community Center.
Yeah, this community center.
And then 2013, where they named the street after him, Sean Bell Way. Talking more about his life, what I'm planning on to do now, we're doing Sean E. Bell Scholarship Fund in honor of his name with his high school, John Adams, and also to give out to other young Black women and men who wants to be somebody. Now also the mural that was torn down,
Yes,
we're also seeking a place for that also.
to replace it.
And in 2016, I wrote a book, as you can see, Sean Bell, Just 23. But what had happened, I started back to work, like I said, in December. So when I went back during the vigil time, I sat at my desk, my goddaughter, who's the co-author, I was just talking to her. As I talked, she was writing. So it's called Sean Bell, Just 23, Words from a Mother and Spoken Word by Keisha Walker. So this became my therapy because the book is not solely about him, it's my feelings that I was going through, the feelings that he had. He has something in the book. His children has, something in the book. His brother, his sister, and other people that knew him wrote something for the book. So this was really my therapy. So that came out in 2016. So it took me really 7 years to complete this book. And in the 8th year, it came out. And you do have to make time for yourself to sit back and relax like you're doing too much. He tells me now I do too much, but like I told him, I'm going to do it till the day I die, just to let the people know our son is somebody. He was kind. He was good-hearted. He wanted to be a man of his word by marrying the woman who had his children. He would do anything for you. He kept his word whenever he said he's going to do something for you, to remember him like that and to remember the gift that he had, that God gave him to be a baseball player, pro baseball player, or electrician. He was going to be somebody. Not saying that he never did anything wrong, because we all have done things wrong in our life, but we live up to things to do better. That he came from a good family, that a mother and father who stood by him, that are married for 45 years, now, but at the time, 15 years ago, it was 30 years. So he was a man of his word. He knew what he wanted in life, and he wanted to live life to his fullest, love his girls. He could have had more children. We never knew. We would never know. But he loved his family. He was a family man.
That's why we try to keep his name alive, because I'm thinking if they don't see you, they'll forget about him. Because I said when all the lights, cameras, and action is gone, all the people are gone. A lot of people that were there when all of this was happening, when all the lights and cameras that was on my sister's back and coming to visit, and all of that has faded. And I don't want his name to go in vain. And that's why every chance we get to be out there, to speak, to let them know how we feel, to let them know that we have not forgotten about Sean, we are going to be there. Anybody that wants to listen, I'll be there to tell them.
That's the whole thing. And I said before in one of my interviews, justice for us is when you stop killing us with our hands up. Justice for us is when you stop killing us when we run away. Justice for us is when we are able to ask you a question. Why are you stopping me? Why we can't do that? That's the thing that baffles me. You could stop me being respectful. Officer, why are you stopping me? And they won't let you, they won't answer you. So when will there be justice for us? And I'm praying that the work that we do and the work that's been done, that our children will see that change and our children will come forth to do something about it also.
I can't believe it's been 15 years ago. You know, you think about it, come November 25th, be 15 years.
Yep.
See, I hate when my birthday comes because it's only a week away. I'm November 19th. And the following week, that's when it happened. It's like, wow, I'm cursed now, you know, because you figure your birthday, you know, like, okay, celebrate with your kids, stuff like that. Wasn't no celebration. I haven't celebrated really since, you know. I can't get into that, you know. For the birthday, even holidays is hard, you know. But even though I have 2 other kids and I have a whole bunch of grandkids, but it's something like you lose one. That one takes away a lot from you. And people don't understand that. You know, they look around at you and say, oh, you should be getting over it. How the heck you gonna get over this? You know, it's so much hurt and pain and anger in you. For me, it is. Because I can't forgive. I'm gonna be honest with you. I will never forgive what they did. Because they took something away from me they shouldn't have. And they ain't getting nothing's done about it. You know, people wonder why I go into this shell. They don't understand my feelings. You know, that's a hurting feeling. I lost my mother when I was young, man. I was 21. I lost my aunts. I lost 3 sisters, you know. But it's nothing like losing that child.
Special thank you to the family of Sean Bell. Please check out Valerie's book, Just 23, on Amazon or wherever books are sold online. As always, push to have your state end qualified immunity, as we've done here in New York. Names of the fallen mentioned in these episodes: Amadou Diallo, Delrawn Small, Mohamed Bah, Sean Bell. We appreciate you for listening to Say Their Name, courtesy of DCP Entertainment, as well as special thanks to our team, host and executive producers Adell Coleman and myself, Chris Colbert, producers Heather Johnson, Ryan Woodhall, and Mike DuBose, associate producer Quinton Hill, and editor and sound designer Byron Hunt.